Welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. We are in week 2 of MSU's football season, and I am joined by a new face this week. Jimmy James from Richmond has joined me to kind of give a preview into the Richmond Spiders, how their season has gone so far, and kind of what he thinks will go down in their matchup against Michigan State. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Like I said, this is my
Yeah.
first real time here, so honored to do sort of a
Woo!
school collaboration. Yeah, super
Yeah,
excited.
yeah. All right. Well, before we get into football stuff, give me a little bit of background into you and kind of what you do at Richmond.
Absolutely, yeah. So I am the sports editor of our student newspaper, The Collegian. Took on that role in December of last year. So what that entails is just sort of assigning games for students to cover to the other writers, and then covering games myself. I'm still sort of the primary sports reporter for our school, so I cover everything from field hockey to men's and women's basketball to women's soccer to football. And then, yeah, I started writing for the paper April 2022. Have loved it. And yeah, love covering college sports, everything University of Richmond athletics.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So, you are currently a student at Richmond, based off
Yes.
being the editor of the student paper. What year are you and how long do you have to go?
I'm a junior. So yeah,
Nice.
I will graduate 2025.
Awesome.
And yeah, excited to finish out the second half, I guess, of
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, I do have a little bit of a silly question for you. Did you pick Richmond just because they have the best? I don't want to say best because Sparty's the best. Just because they have an awesome mascot.
That's a great question. I was actually talking to someone. I have a job in admissions where we do these chats with prospective students. And I was saying I sort of applied during COVID, and a representative came to my school before things broke out, and the application process was crazy. But he was talking about the spider, and that's sort of what got Richmond on my radar for sure.
Nice.
I'd say that wasn't, the firm selling point, but I thought it was cool
Yeah.
to sort of have that unique title to
Yeah.
join.
Super unique. I'm a fan. I love the center of your basketball court. And I just looked it up like last week as we were prepping kind of at the end of our recap episode. Your football stadium has it also in the middle, right? The big
Yes,
spider.
it is
Nice.
sort of
That's
plastered all
cool.
around campus.
I imagine. I
I'm
imagine.
looking at one right now above my desk. So
You
yeah,
can't get away from them. That's funny.
the spider pride is everywhere.
I love it. Okay. Well, let's kind of move in to some background into Richmond. I want to do a little bit of a positional breakdown. Um, I know that you have a new quarterback this season, Kyle Wickersham.
Mhm.
He's a big guy. He's a nice sized quarterback from what I read, what I saw. Um, Based off my brief review of your last game, he likes to use his feet. Can you tell me a little bit more about his style of play and kind of where he's at just after his first game?
Yeah, absolutely. So he definitely has some big shoes to fill. Last year we had Reese Udinsky, who transferred from Virginia Military Institute (VMI) and was a grad transfer, and he was played a big role in our run to the playoffs last year. So
Yeah.
obviously for Wickersham to sort of fill that hole, it's definitely a tough task. But yeah, I thought sort of coming out of the gates on their first drive, he used his feet a lot, as you said. I think probably upwards of 5 runs on that drive, just him alone. The first touchdown of the game was him rushing, which I was not too sure that was how it would start. He had a
Hmm.
little bit of experience in a playoff blowout game back in December, where he sort of got to take over the offense for the second half of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he was just sort of, untouched, and this was his debut. And it seems like, yeah, the run game works for him. Like you said, his stature sort of helps him definitely see over the offense, but
Hmm.
he's definitely mobile on his feet. And I think that was one of the things that did work for Richmond. Obviously, the loss
Yeah.
as the result, but I think that was one of the things that will help them sort of carry on the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another note that I kind of had from our side of things, MSU's secondary coach pointed out that you have quite a speedy running back in Javion Griffin. I guess he holds his high school record for the 200-meter run. Tell me a little bit about him and what you saw from him in the first game.
Yeah, I actually that's an interesting stat about the high school. I did not know that. Yeah, he's super speedy as a receiver, like you said. He had 3 catches, over 40 yards in the game against Morgan State. So definitely a nice debut there. I think he can
Yeah,
be a strong option for the Spiders. Another guy, Nick DeGennaro, he's a redshirt junior. I believe he had 6 catches on the game, but sort of some quick slants that got the Spiders some yardage when the
nice.
offense was working. But yeah, I think between Griffin and DeGennaro, those are 2 options offensively that might not have been working the best in terms of opportunities last game,
Hmm.
but something that they can utilize for sure
Okay.
going down the stretch.
Yeah. Any other offensive notes before we kind of move to the other side of the ball?
Yeah, I the main running back Savon Smith, he sort of shared the ball with our primary running back last year, Aaron Dykes, who
Hmm.
actually was with the preseason with the Minnesota Vikings, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
He didn't make the final roster, but so he was sort of had to take a back seat to him last year, but this is sort of his first year in the spotlight. I thought he had a solid game. He'll be their primary rusher and I believe kickoff returner, punt returner.
Okay.
So definitely carrying a lot of hats there. He
Yeah,
did
for
have
sure.
a fumble on one of those punt returns, so that was sort of uncharacteristic. I remember in the post game, our coach Russ Huseman was saying, you know, he's a great kid. It happens. So I don't expect that to happen a lot, but I think he'll be a big piece going down the line, like those receivers, to
Hmm.
sort of help Wickersham, not have to use his feet every
Right.
possession, every drive.
Yeah, nice. Okay, moving on to defense. Give me a couple notes from the defense after the first game, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Tristan Wheeler, he's a linebacker. He's a redshirt senior. He had 17 tackles in the game. He's sort of their anchor. He's one of their captains for the defense. The defense was one of the things that I think was working. Obviously, we lost, so not fully.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I do think with sort of a younger team coming
mm,
off a playoff run with a lot of
yeah,
veterans who graduated, having that defense sort of veteran leadership. And Marlon Lewis, he's another redshirt senior defensive
nice.
tackle. He and Wheeler both had a sack. So they're sort of that anchor. I believe there was a third sack in the game from Aiden Murray, who's another defensive stalwart, if you will.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think the defense can be a pro for the Spiders, having that sort of veteran sense there, having especially Wheeler and Lewis anchoring that.
Yeah, I understand how important it is to have kind of those veteran guys on the team. Since MSU is kind of in a rebuild time right now, and we're kind of, going through some they the we I say we, I'm not on the team. They um are kind of going through some tribulations with kind of getting settled after new coaching staff and things coming over. So having those senior leaders is super important, especially after the team had such a good year last year. It's important to have those guys stick around to kind of carry that on to the next year.
Absolutely.
Tell me anything about special teams. Do you have any notes there?
Yeah, I actually think that was one of the biggest weaknesses for the team.
Okay.
There were 2 missed field goals by our kicker, Andrew Lopez. He was actually a punter slash kicker that took over when our kicker last year had an injury,
Mm,
and now is sort of the main guy. Missed one from I think north of 40 yards, so that just that happens. But
yeah.
the other one I think was blocked. So I think just little things like that. That if we had connected on those field goals, if Savon Smith hadn't dropped that fumble late when we had several timeouts to go and one more drive left, and enough time to maybe tie things up down the stretch. I think those are things that can be fixed, and certainly Coach Huseman probably wasn't the most excited about in the post game. But yeah, I think special teams can be an asset. It wasn't necessarily one against Morgan State, but like I said, I think it can be worked on and used
Yeah.
sort of in the coming games throughout the season.
All right. All right. So we've touched on it as we've gone kind of through our positional review, but talk to me a little bit more about the first game. You've mentioned a couple of things that have gone wrong, but overall, what went wrong and what went right for Richmond against Morgan State?
Yeah, I think first drive of the game, I know I mentioned this, but Wickersham used his feet a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of a just constantly getting yardage and getting down the field, and we got the first score of the game. So I was sort of in my head up in the booth. I was like, okay, we can roll with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
We might not be the same playoff team that we were last year. Obviously, every team has to build their own identity, but I sort of had hope after that first drive. But then Morgan State sort of rushed down the field and did the same thing. So it was definitely a sort of a mirrored game. There would be score after score, and then maybe we threw a pick, and then they threw a pick, and then Spiders missed a field goal, then Morgan State missed a field goal. Sort of frustrating up there in the booth seeing that. But yeah, I think just starting the game strong is important and building off of that. Maybe the Spiders didn't do the best job of sort of continuing that momentum from that first drive. Because from the looks of it, if you take away everything else and just look at that first drive alone, I think that's the team that the Spiders want to be. And obviously, I mentioned some special teams mishaps and
Yeah.
some interceptions, some turnovers, some fumbles, which aren't great for trying to win a game. But I do think trying to capitalize on Wickersham's ability to get out of the pocket, run,
Yeah.
and like I said, leaning on that defense will be two keys to being successful in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about like post game press conference. Any specific points that your coach had about things to clean up before the Spiders come to Spartan Stadium?
Yeah, I think the overall sentiment was he sort of blamed himself and the coaching staff. I think he thought they didn't give them the team the best game plan possible, and so I think that was sort of the exit point to give the Spiders the best chance to head into Michigan State. Obviously, a Power Five conference school, FCS versus FBS,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm sure we'll get into, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was definitely frustrated with the efforts, but sort of having everyone take some of the blame and fixing the things that can be fixed, and then going back to the drawing board with things that didn't were sort of some of his main points in the post
Yeah.
game.
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's just get into kind of what you mentioned. So, this is the first ever matchup between Richmond and Michigan State. Because I went back to try to do some look into the history books, but couldn't find anything, obviously. Um, I don't know. Give me, from your perspective, what are the challenges for an FCS team coming and playing at a big stadium FBS team on the road? Talk to me a little bit about kind of the mindset that a team has to come with when they come to a big stadium like that.
Yeah, I actually pivoting a little bit. I saw an interview with one of Colorado's players,
Mm,
and he obviously came from Coach Sanders and the
right.
HBCU,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of that same situation where he's making that leap to playing
Yeah.
against FCS people to then FBS. I think the biggest thing is just sort of treating it like any other game. We had a game against the University of Virginia, our season opener last year. They're an FBS school, and
Mm-hmm.
it was actually pretty close. At some moments, I thought maybe the Spiders could pull it out, but yeah, we have had that experience less than a year ago, so that's definitely good to
Yeah.
keep in the back pocket for this upcoming game. But yeah, I think also Tristan Wheeler in a press conference after that University of Virginia game just said sort of it doesn't matter who we play, Division 1, Division 3, FCS, FBS, Alabama or a smaller school
Yeah.
in Iowa or something. I think it just matters about just keeping the same mindset and pretending like everyone's in the same league. And I think while some players might be in FCS, a lot of those players I think would be successful at the FBS level, and vice versa. So I think the two programs are probably more similar than one would think. Obviously, MSU a lot bigger, a lot more experience. But yeah, I think not to keep repeating myself, but just
No.
uh, you know, sticking with the same game plan and treating it like any other normal game.
I feel like you have to do that, or else you're setting your guys up for failure. I mean, as a coach, you have to say, this is no different than any other team that will play. This is no different than any other place. I mean, just for morale alone, I feel like that's something that you have to do. So I agree completely. Any other points about coming to Michigan State for the first time, or kind of an outlook for how you think the game will go?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. Regardless of the outcome, I think it's exciting to have sort of a smaller school in Richmond
Yeah.
to play against a big name school like Michigan State. I know I'm always fighting for the basketball team or to myself, maybe not publicly, but I wish they would play some bigger power conference schools just to get that opportunity, get that
Yeah.
chance to have some of our guys, get their names out there, but also uh, get a chance to sort of grow the program, build the program, get our
Absolutely.
program on the map. So yeah, regardless, I think of the game, I think that's a great opportunity. I don't know that Richmond has the greatest chances, to be honest. I'm a Spider through and through, and I will.
Of course.
We get into this journalistic art as fans first.
Hmm.
So I will always support the Spiders, but I do think you know Michigan State will probably come away with it. I think I said to the reporter I spoke to,
Hmm.
Nick, 31-10 was my final prediction, just
Okay.
right off the dome, in favor of Michigan State. But
Okay.
hoping the Spiders can put up a good effort against the green and white.
Do you get to travel with the team to cover the game?
I do not.
Ah.
Which stinks because it would be fun to go
Mhm.
to Michigan State. I've never been to Michigan or a big school like that for a game. But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe down the road if another opportunity like that presents itself, it would be cool. But I'll be rooting on the Spiders, taking some notes here from Richmond.
All right. All right. My last kind of point here is just looking ahead to the rest of Richmond's season. Do you have any predictions on how things might go? I know they've only had one game, so it might be a little bit hard, but any rumblings on how you think things might go after the first game in the press conference and all that?
Yeah, so I thought the Morgan State game was a sort of a game that slipped away. Looking at first glance at our season schedule, I knew that Michigan State would probably be pose as a tough opponent. But yeah, I think the rest of the schedule is definitely full of winnable games, some conference games against some mid-major schools in the FCS that we had success against last year. One new team in there is North Carolina A&T, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
That's about 2 hours from Richmond, so I might get to go to that game.
Nice.
But yeah, I think if the Spiders can sort of combat their issues and work on things, and get some great experience from this game and give the Spartans a fight, then that will sort of regardless of the score, build some momentum for the latter half of the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I wanted to ask you something that's been a topic on the podcast and kind of, I guess, on Twitter a lot this season. Um, is NIL. And we've talked a lot about how, and MSU fans know, how it has affected our team and our roster and the guys that kind of have come and gone. How has the NIL affected a school like Richmond with getting guys and keeping them on campus?
Yeah, so I think for a long time, Richmond's sort of MO was keeping players for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
know both for football and basketball, we had guys 4 or 5, maybe even 6 seasons. Just keeping guys for a long time. But yeah, I think it's tough for a small school, just because I think athletes who are in the transfer portal or deciding where they want to sign can see a bigger school like Michigan State or a Villanova or a Michigan or whatever that has those bigger opportunities to make money as an athlete. And I think a lot of sports people talk about this movement of athlete empowerment, and I think it's great that the athletes can make money and make those decisions on their own. But it is tough, I think, for a smaller school of 3,200 students, sort of a hidden gem in the capital city of Richmond that many people don't know about in terms of sports. That yeah, it can be tough to lure in players from the transfer portal. But yeah, I'm hopeful that sort of in a post COVID world, we can get back to keeping players and playing schools like Michigan State for football or any other sport is like I said, a great way to get the name on the map, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I mean, I think no matter the size of the school or the program, I feel like things are kind of crazy with NIL and the transfer portal. And and I've said this 10 million times on the podcast. So if I have any recurring listeners, they're going to be like, please stop. But I just feel like there needs to be more rules and there needs to be, I don't know, rules, guidelines, I don't know, things set in place to kind of protect the status quo of how things were pre-COVID and pre-NIL and everything. And I think that will come eventually. But right now, I feel like that's a perspective that I haven't had on the podcast. And it's interesting to hear it from that side of the coin about not being able to keep guys because you are a smaller place and, bigger schools have lots and lots of money to offer. And I do agree with your point. It is important and it is, I think, necessary that the athletes are getting paid now. It was a step that needed to happen, but something that maybe needs to be um, regulated a little bit more. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all I have for you, Jimmy. Anything else to add?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, honored to be on the pod,
Yeah.
and yeah, love opportunities like this. So,
Of course.
thanks again for
Yeah.
making this happen.
You are so welcome. This podcast will be posted on YouTube and many audio platforms, so you can find us anywhere you listen. Michigan State faces Richmond on Saturday at Spartan Stadium. I should know the time. 3 p.m., I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep. Hold on. Let me confirm. Um,
3:30.
uh,
3:30.
3:30. Oh, don't want to get there too early at 3 o'clock. Anyways, um, Spartans Illustrated is running a promo right now, and I will put that promotional information in the description of our episode. And Jimmy's information will be linked in the description if you want to give him a follow. If you want to become a, you know, follower of the Spiders, I think that's a good idea. Hit him up for any podcast needs now that he's an expert. And thanks so much for listening. I will be back after the game against Richmond to do a recap with some Spartans Illustrated staff. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.